The Senate Energy and Utilities Finance and Policy Committee will come to order. Today's date is February 9th, 2017 at 1 o'clock. And welcome to the committee. We do not yet have a quorum, but I will let the record show when we do. The first item on the agenda is Senate File 214, Senator Osmic's bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I'd like to move the A3 amendment. It's an author's amendment. First, this is the first committee of jurisdiction. I'd like to get the bill in the shape that I wanted, and then we will start down the testifier's route and describe the bill.
Senator Osmic moves the A3 amendment.
We can't
Do you
take
need to
action on that, can we?
Do you want to speak to that, or
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Senator Osmic?
We don't have a quorum yet, but as soon as we do, looks like we're going to have it soon. The A3 amendment.
We do now have a quorum. Let the record show a quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the A3 amendment adds an additional year to the Made in Minnesota provisions. Under the original bill, Made in Minnesota was going to end prior to this grant cycle, which would have left some of the solar providers in a difficult situation. Some of the solar installers have already purchased and have these expensive arrays already available, and to accommodate them and also not cut them off somewhat at the knees, I added that additional year of Made in Minnesota, and there's an additional appropriation listed, lines 115 through 121 for support for the Commissioner's office. So that is the amendment.
Senator Osmic, the date changes the A4 amendment.
Oh, sorry. I have an A3 in front of me.
Mr. Chair and Senator Osmic, I was going to say that there is an A3 author's amendment that particular amendment would put the bill in the same shape as the other body has it. So, and that is purely technical. There are some references in there that make sure that when the Department of Commerce administers the Made in Minnesota program, that they would be looking at the 2016 statutes because those are being repealed. It also clarifies some language on the appropriation that the money, that the Department of Commerce shouldn't spend any money on administration costs, but then makes a $100,000 appropriation starting on line 1.15 for administrative costs to administer the program. And then it also, on line 1.24, includes a repealer that was missed on the original bill introduction. So that is purely pretty much technical, and it just puts it in the same shape as the House. Then with the A4, that would extend for another year through this grant cycle for the Made in Minnesota program, as you explained, Mr. Chair and Senator Osmic.
Thank you. I was
Senator
looking more
Osmic.
at the A3 as a single, but that is correct. So I would, Mr. Chair, to get this bill in the shape that I would prefer it to be in, I'd first move the A3 amendment.
Senator Osmic moves the A3 amendment. Any discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the A3 amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Amendment is adopted.
Mr.
Senator
Chair,
Osmic.
I'd then move the A4 amendment.
Senator Osmic moves the A4 amendment. Any discussion to that? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment is adopted. To the bill as amended, Senator Osmic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill has two functions. One is it ends the Made in Minnesota program, and it also moves the Renewable Developments Fund under legislative control for future expenditures. On page 1, it removes the Made in Minnesota eligible program for solar programs on state buildings. Going into page 2, it references the Excel Solar Rewards section and simplifies the definition of photovoltaic devices. And starting in section line 2.27, it creates the new energy fund that would be under legislative jurisdiction. On page 3, starting on line 3.3, it defines the energy fund transfers. except for the funds needed to support the existing outlays that we have. Just for members' information, the Made in Minnesota program has 10-year runouts and payments to individuals who have already put the arrays on their facilities, and we want to make sure that we complete what we have promised them as the legislature and continue to make the payments as required through the Department of Commerce's policy or program. On section page 3.24, this is a 4.1 million set aside for those obligations. Section on page 4, starting at the top of the page, it repeals the competitive grants process. And towards the bottom of the page, it also repeals the RDF advisory group. Going on to page 5, it repeals, there's some additional repealer language starting on line 5.7. And on page 6, it begins to define the energy fund on line 6.2 and 6.23. Page 7, it goes into discussing the energy fund again, and then we move into section 6, and we identify that no incentive payments made under this section to an owner whose application was approved by the effective date. So that's the real termination of the Made in Minnesota provisions. And then on page 8, section 8, page 8, number section 7, it does the same, has a similar language that's previous to the bill for solar thermal rebates. And there's an additional repealer on line 8.11 that repeals some of the U of M money that was, I believe it's not necessarily been used in the past, so we're just getting rid of that language that sends RDF money there. So members, I'd point you to a handout that identifies the cost of Made in Minnesota solar. It talks about the incentive paid, the incentive per kilowatt hour, and the Commerce Administration's cost. I think the Made in Minnesota program was a provision that was put in, I believe, in the 2013 legislative session, which was to incentivize Made in Minnesota solar panels, which were really only in 2 facilities or 2 companies in Minnesota at the time, one specifically on the Iron Range. And it was designed with good intent that it would help foster that facility particularly on the Iron Range. It hasn't really worked out well. What we are incentivizing with Made in Minnesota right now is we are incentivizing the most expensive solar energy that is available in the state. My intent with removing the Made in Minnesota provisions is to bring this to an end and bring the program to the Legislative Energy Commission during the interim, at which time we can look at during that period to find a program that works better for Minnesotans. The amount of money we're providing in the SPIF payments could be better used by not focusing on necessarily on Made in Minnesota products. We could certainly find cheaper alternatives that could spread that incentive payment more broadly to more individuals. I think a lot of people look at this as a glass half empty situation. I look at it as half full. I think we can make a better program that incentivizes solar energy if that's what the legislature wants to do in the future. The other component to this is the Renewable Development Fund coming under legislative control. I'm a firm believer that we are responsible if we are taxing, and that's what that RDF is a tax that is paid that goes into the Renewable Developments Fund. I believe we should, as a matter of policy, be the individuals or be the organization that is accountable for how that money is spent. I understand that PUC is involved and there are groups involved, but I think ultimately by having legislative control and also going through the Legislative Energy Commission, which many of you will be sitting on, I think we can find better programs for Minnesotans that are less costly and more effective if our emphasis is going to be on expanding solar energy in Minnesota. With that, Mr. Chair, I would be happy to entertain questions, or we could certainly move to the testifiers and take questions later.
Questions, members? Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for Senator Osmek. You characterize the dollars that go into the Renewable Development Fund as a tax. Can you explain further why you view it as a tax? As I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe council can help. I think it's simply dollars that are assessed to Xcel, from their resources that are paid by ratepayers, of course. I don't know that it takes the form of a specific tax, but it's rather Xcel money paid by ratepayers.
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Dibble, I think it is a semantic issue. I feel that because we are legislatively mandating that a fee be attached to each storage cask at Monticello and at Prairie Island, and that fee is then reflected in the ratepayers, how much they pay. Ultimately, I think of it as a tax. I think you could make the case that it isn't necessarily a classic tax that you would say you have to pay your income tax. But it is a backdoor methodology to fund that fund for purposes that we deem important here in Minnesota. So I won't argue whether it was a tax or not, but I will say eventually ratepayers pay it, and that's you and me.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you. There are a number of instances where the legislature makes this assessment to Xcel or other utilities, and simply directs the dollars to go to a fund or go to some purpose. So would we apply the same logic to those assessments as well?
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Dibble, I'll give up on the tax, calling it a tax, but in my opinion, it works and acts just like it. You're taking it out of ratepayers' pockets to fund solar in Minnesota or other initiatives. So I won't argue whether it's a classic name of a tax. It just walks, talks, and acts like a tax to me.
Any further questions? Senator Goggin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Osmek, I see the funding for this comes out of the nuclear power plants. Is that correct?
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Goggin, you are correct. There is a small component that comes out of, I believe there's a small component into the RDF that comes from refineries also.
Okay.
That being primarily Flint Hills, there's a small component that goes in there. So it's not exclusive to the casks, but it is the vast majority is the cask storage, and it's based upon each individual cask that's currently stored at our 2 nuclear facilities.
Senator Goggin.
Thank you. So as a ratepayer for Xcel Energy, I have them as my service. I'm paying into this fund as well as anybody else in Xcel Energy customers. Is this the intent that this solar would be deployed in the Xcel Energy system? Because that's mainly who's paying this RDF fund or supplying the funds for it. One would think you would redeploy that money into that system for the ratepayers that are affected by this.
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Goggin, we do have Deputy Commissioner Grant here who can actually go over where the current Made in Minnesota incentives are going. However, and you are on the Legislative Energy Commission, I think that's a broader question on where we go in the future with the RDF is, do we focus it, if it is Xcel ratepayers, do we keep it exclusively to the Xcel ratepayers, or do we broaden it out to all of Minnesota? And it has implications when you expand beyond the people who are actually paying for that funding, that you're actually having people get a benefit without actually contributing to it. So I understand your point on that one, and we can confirm with Mr. Grant when he comes up here Where that goes out to, I can't answer that specifically right now.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any further questions, members? Senator Osmick, do you have any testifiers you wish to present?
Yep, the first one is Cam Winton from the Chamber of Commerce, and then there are a couple of oppositions that are going to chime in.
Mr. Winton, welcome to the committee. If you would state your name for the record, please, and then feel free to proceed.
Thank you. I'm Cam Winton, Director of Energy and Labor Management Policy at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. The Minnesota Chamber is made up of 2,300 companies all across the state of Minnesota. And between them, those 2,300 companies have 500,000 employees. We're proud to be part of the fabric of Minnesota. I'm testifying today in support of Senate File 214 as amended, and we encourage this committee to vote yes. I'd like to speak today to some context for this bill. As a person, before I got into energy policy, I just turned on my lights and paid my bill and frankly didn't think that much about it. And I think that's probably the case for many Minnesotans. We pay our power bill and we don't think that much about it. But for many employers across the state, many businesses, the price of power is a significant impact on their ability to conduct business here in Minnesota and make goods and services, employ people, and thrive. Quick example, there are forestry companies in greater Minnesota that have power bills of $3 million a month. I mean, imagine that, $3 million a month on electricity. And as companies with power bills of that size are deciding where to grow, where to expand, they look very carefully at the cost of electricity. Now, it is certainly true that in the state of Minnesota, broadly speaking, electricity costs less than it does out on the coasts, as you all, as members of the Energy Committee, probably know already. But it's also the case that here in Minnesota, the rate of increase of the cost of electricity is faster than the national average rate of increase, and it's faster than many of our neighboring states. And also, when you look at some cost comparisons, the straight-up price right now is higher in Minnesota than it is in some neighboring states. Quick example, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin have higher industrial rates than we do, but Iowa has a lower one. And Minnesota, on the commercial side, Iowa, South Dakota, and North Dakota are less expensive. So these are real considerations for companies in Minnesota and companies globally looking whether to expand here or not. I say all this about the distressing trend of the cost of electricity in Minnesota because when we talk about the money that goes into the Renewable Development Fund, that is a $26 million per year hit on ratepayers within Xcel Energy service territory that they have to pay into this fund. That was probably well-intentioned when it was first created, but really has some problems with it now. And particularly with the Made in Minnesota program, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce believes in an all-of-the-above energy strategy, which uses fossil fuels and nuke for baseload power and uses wind and solar, yes, where appropriate, when properly sited and at the proper scale. But unfortunately, the Made in Minnesota program has not lived up to its promise and constitutes a massive subsidy that frankly gives a bad name to the rest of renewables. You know, when folks who engage in the renewable energy business in ways that are cost competitive have to go around and explain time and again that no, really, when put in the right place and built at the right scale, wind and solar do make sense, the counterfactuals that they have to explain away are things like the small-scale projects at issue here. So we do support this Senate file, and we urge you to pass it as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Winton. Any questions? Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Winton. Early in your testimony, you referenced the cost of electricity, I think, for perhaps you either referenced paper mill or mining industries up in northern Minnesota, and you're absolutely right. That is a huge factor for them to consider and is always a topic of interest for them. But could you just help me draw a direct line of correlation between what we're doing in this particular bill and how that would affect customers in a different IOU? I mean, we're talking about one thing in the bill here. Just help me understand how that's going to correlate to lower electricity costs in northern Minnesota.
Oh, very
Mr.
fair
Winton.
point, Senator. And Mr. Chair, Senator Simonson, thank you for raising the point. You're, of course, exactly right that, as I mentioned, the burden, the $26 million per year burden on ratepayers is for Xcel Energy ratepayers. And the companies I'm talking about engaged in forestry in greater Minnesota are not Xcel Energy ratepayers. So you're right that for this particular bill, it will not reduce the costs of those ratepayers. But there are certainly other ratepayers within Xcel Energy service territory that are paying industrial and commercial rates who will save money because of the reforms proposed here. But thank you for the clarification, Senator.
Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that answer. I just wanted to clarify that there's no direct correlation there between costs of energy in northern Minnesota and what we're doing in this bill.
Senator Osmic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And a little comment to the point that Senator Simonson has been making. I think there would be indirect savings because certainly the Iron Range is not an island unto itself. There are businesses and businesses that provide different types of supplies to the Iron Range for their operations. I think it's not terribly measurable. I think we would both agree, but we live in a large economy, and in considering the size of the Xcel ratepayer area, I have no doubt that if there were lower rates, that there would be some level of impact that may keep costs down on products that might have to go to the Iron Range for support structures, whether it be iron for taconite mining or other types of operations. Mr. Chair, one additional request. I would like to have Mr. Casey go through the fiscal note. We didn't go through that at the beginning. So before the opposition testifiers, it would be good to have him go through that fiscal note, please.
All right, Mr. Mumm.
Mr. Chair and members, the fiscal note in your packet details the effect of the bill. The projected balance of $54.41 million in the RDF currently would be transferred into the newly created energy fund. There would be a estimated annual revenue into the energy fund of about $27 million. Net, or subtracted from that would be $100,000 for administrative costs to administer the incentive payments, plus the value of the incentive payments. With the amendment that extends the grant program availability for a year, that figure is not reflected in this fiscal note. An additional fiscal note on the amendment has been requested but is not completed. The elimination of the program also has a reduction of 2.75 FTEs in the Department of Commerce associated with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mumm. Senator Osmic, there's one more testifier who requested to speak in support of the bill. I'll ask Edna Brazaitis. I hope I pronounced that right.
You did.
Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Edna Brazaitis, and my comments are restricted to the grant portion of the RDF. I think the focus has really been on the solar incentives, but we all have to remember there is a grant program which currently consists of 17 grants that total over $31 million. I support reform of the RDF grant program, but I want you to be tougher, and I want to make sure there's oversight of this large amount of money. You have to understand not every grant works out, and in the state of Minnesota, we have the policy that grants don't have a life of more than 5 years. So among these grants, there are zombie projects, things that have been struggling and really will never get built. And there will be some in the future. So I urge you to give a specific direction in this legislation to terminate a grant if the project is not completed within 5 years. These can be reasons like they don't have sustained adequate financing, site control, or permits. And this would be similar to 16B 98 Subdivision 5B, which governs grants from the state and says they can't be extended for more than 5 years without extraordinary circumstances. I'm sure all of us have a use for this money that's being tied up in these grants, so I hope that you take steps to make sure that there's oversight and that bad grants are terminated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brusitis. Is there any questions from the committee? All right, Senator Osmic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in response, I think she has a very good and valid point, and that's one of the reasons why I'm pushing forward to have the RDF under legislative control, because we can, as part of where we go with the future of RDF, put those guideposts, put those measurements, and to be able to provide a feedback to our constituents and the ratepayers as far as what value they are getting. And she's exactly correct in that if we find a program and we create a program, that we also measure its impact and the actual cost and the benefits we're getting. So I think her comments are exceptionally well taken.
Thank you, Senator Osmic. Seeing no further questions, are others who wish to testify to voice concerns to the bill? Deputy Commissioner Bill Grant from the Department of Commerce. Commissioner, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Bill Grant for the Department of Commerce. The 2013 legislature passed the Made in Minnesota program and asked the Department of Commerce to implement and run the program. The program has developed Minnesota solar manufacturing, sales, distribution, and installation jobs, and has grown Minnesota solar capacity. In fact, I think it's fair to say that without Made in Minnesota, there wouldn't be a rooftop solar market in Minnesota. Since the first Made in Minnesota awards were made in April 2014, over 1,000 projects have been funded in the first 3 years, representing 15 megawatts of generating capacity. The program continues to be massively oversubscribed, with over 3,400 applications received in the first 3 years for only 1,000 projects, or a roughly 32% rate that we're able to fund. The number of jobs that the program has created has increased from two, and the number of manufacturers that are involved in the program have increased from 2 in 2013 to 5 presently today. 1,300 jobs, solar jobs were created between 2013 and 2015, a 131% increase. 20 new manufacturing and 13 new installation jobs created for each megawatt installed, resulting in an estimated 495 new jobs from Made in Minnesota since 2013. 500 Minnesota companies that include manufacturing, sales, distribution, and installation, really the whole solar supply chain, are supported by the Made in Minnesota program. 53 of Minnesota's 87 counties have residents and businesses that have received a Made in Minnesota incentive. And over 100 Minnesota companies have been awarded projects over that period of time. For some, it represents the lion's share of their business. Speaking to the growing solar capacity in Minnesota over this same time, the price of Made in Minnesota solar installations has decreased over those 3 years from $8.30 a watt in 2013 to $4.11 a watt in 2016 for commercial and $4.72 a watt for residential. And these costs continue to fall, and that has been reflected in the adjustments that have been made year to year in the incentive payments that we make available to that year class. Energy generated each year from 2014 to 2016 Made in Minnesota projects is equivalent to the energy used by over 1,800 Minnesota homes. Between 2017 and 2023, there is the potential for 4,200 new Made in Minnesota projects funded, representing another 45 megawatts of new capacity. More than twice as many homes and businesses have solar in 2016 as compared to 2014. And energy generated from Made in Minnesota projects in 2024, the last year of the program under the current statute, will be equivalent to the energy used by nearly 10,000 homes. And as I mentioned, the per kilowatt hour incentive rates have fallen by 2 to 3 times, and we project will continue to fall as the program matures, allowing not only for much lower cost solar incentives, but a much larger number of projects being awarded. And just to give you a couple of examples of businesses that have been benefited by the program, one company, Aquila Solar, based in Winona, Minnesota, 80% of their business now comes from the Made in Minnesota program. And Alexandria Industries, as you might guess from Alexandria, has gone from earning $0 from manufacturing renewable energy parts to $12 million in just 2 years. I want to speak briefly also to the today's amendment. There are a couple of issues that I think we need to raise. First of all, we appreciate the fact that Senator Osmek has realized the challenges that would be posed by an immediate termination of the program, particularly to the solar installer community who have made investments on the assumption that, the good faith assumption that there would be a program in 2017. We're certainly open to considering changes to the program, and Senator Osmek and I have discussed what some of those might look like. But from our perspective, the wrong approach would be to repeal the program first before considering what those changes might look like. Secondly, and a much smaller point, but I wanted to note, and if we get into the fiscal note, we can discuss this, but of course, the administrative costs that are addressed in the other amendment that came over from the House deal at some level with the administrative costs for this biennium, but of course, for the commitments that have already been made, those were 10-year commitments, and we will need to look at administrative costs going forward if the bill does proceed and signed by the governor about what those costs would be in the out years. Be happy to take any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members, any questions? Senator Goggin.
Thank you, Chairman. Sir, I go back to my question I had earlier to Mr. Osmek regarding why are we not deploying this RDF fund in the XL territory so that the ratepayers that are funding it are getting the benefit of these solar installations and the solar manufacturing?
Commissioner Grant.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Goggin, in fact, we are. The language of the statute makes it clear we're to direct the projects to those areas of the state from which funds have been received into the program. So the lion's share of the program applicants and ultimate participants are XL customers. There are small contributions to the fund that Made Minnesota spends coming from Otter Tail and Minnesota Power ratepayer customers. And in those instances, we direct project funds to those service territories as well.
Senator Goggin.
So are you doing that proportionately based on what's each entity is putting into the fund then? Is that how you're doing the
Mr. Chairman and Senator Goggin, yes, we are doing it on a proportional basis.
Thank you.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Grant, the testimony so far, including your own, talked about the Made in Minnesota program. And the bill also, the biggest part of the bill is to transfer $26 million a year or so from Renewable Development Fund of XL to a state energy fund, which in the bill right now would be, in my mind, a slush fund because it's just an energy fund, no purpose, no anything else. Could you talk about some of the rest of the RDF funds? I mean, not just the Made in Minnesota, which is a big part, which again, and Senator Osmek, one of my beefs about this is I think the RDF fund was actually better when legislators weren't intervening with it. And Made in Minnesota was one where the legislature told RDF, here's what we're doing from the money. Just a couple of years, I think, after Senator Rosen tried to make sure that there was a good process for that. So anyway, could you speak to some of the non-Made in Minnesota portions of this issue?
Commissioner Grant.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Marty, I didn't come prepared to speak to the Renewable Development Fund more generally, but just a couple of examples off the top of my head. Of course, XL Solar Rewards Program is a program that's funded out of the Renewable Development Fund, and in a very similar fashion to Made in Minnesota, provides incentives on a production basis to customers that are desiring to invest in their own energy solutions through a solar rooftop array. Another project that was always a particular favorite of mine, and I served on the Renewable Development Fund board for a number of years, was a project that assisted Xcel with the whole issue of how to integrate larger and larger amounts of intermittent wind power on their system. And I think a lot of the work that was done under that particular grant was since incorporated into Xcel's control center, so that their ability to predict when the wind was going to blow and when it wasn't allowed for a much better real-time incorporation of wind onto Xcel's system, which is what has allowed them today to incorporate much larger shares of wind than I think any one of us ever dreamed possible when we started talking about this back in the early 90s.
Follow-up, Senator Marty?
That's fine.
No. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for Mr. Grant that he might not be ready to answer, but it kind of harkens back to the testimony provided by the Chamber of Commerce and the concern expressed on the impact on ratepayers of this, $25 or so million per year that's assessed against Xcel utility ratepayers. A few years ago, the Monticello plant underwent some upgrades, some repairs, some effort to boost its output and the like, and I think it was estimated to come in around $300 million, ended up costing north of $700 million. And there was an investigation about why that happened, and it was determined that it really was the responsibility of Xcel and how well they managed their initial assessment and then unanticipated consequences, and so more than doubled. And Xcel sought to recover those expenses from ratepayers and actually make a return. I think the determination was that Xcel had to absorb part of the cost, ratepayers had to absorb another part, and then the standard 10% return would not be allowed to Xcel. So we get a lot of concern articulated by various parties about the impact on ratepayers, but it seems like that changes depending on what subject matter is before us. I'm reflecting on a recent hearing on installing a natural gas plant up at Sherco with no attention paid to what would be the most cost-effective solution to the problem of shutting down those Sherco 1 and Sherco 2. Just help us understand, Mr. Grant, what would be the effect on the average residential ratepayer's bill of that shared cost of that Monticello plant upgrade at the end of the day? Like the typical monthly bill, how much, I guess, we would be sharing in a 50% of a $700 or $800 million bill.
Commissioner Grant.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Dibble, I don't have those figures with me. I can certainly get them for you and the committee. Clearly, I mean, the department's position on that was that those costs should be disallowed and that Xcel's customers not be required to pay them. And I know that we had calculated at the time what the effect was on the average residential customer, and it wasn't a trivial amount. But I can certainly provide that for the committee at the earliest convenience.
Yeah,
Senator Dibble.
Mr. Grant, if you could, because we talk a lot about the effect on ratepayers of this assessment or, the amounts of money in a particular rate case, and I don't know, $800 million sounds like a lot of money, $25 million sounds like a lot of money. I have no idea how that translates in practical, everyday terms to the average customer.
Be certainly happy to get that
Thank you.
Commissioner
information.
Senator Simonson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, I just have two questions for you. And one of them stems from the point that Senator Goggin brought up earlier about the proportions of how the funds are distributed. And members, I'll just point you to your packet. There's a chart in the packet that talks about the number of projects and where they're distributed based on, energy territory. And I would point out that since the Made Minnesota Fund was created late in 2013, that about 96% of the projects are in Xcel Energy's territory. And Commissioner, as I understand it, that proportion is based on current law, what's in current law. But and my question is, if you've had the chance to look at this bill and how it would be applied going forward, we're essentially taking this fund and taking the I think it's on the record, $26 million a year that Xcel ratepayers pay, and putting it into this sort of a slush fund, if you will. Is there in this bill any guarantee of where that money can be spent by the legislature in terms of proportions?
Commissioner Grant.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Simon, I've reviewed the bill. I don't find any evidence that there have been decisions made yet about how that money would be distributed, whether it would be kept within Xcel service territory, for example. Those are important questions that I think would need to be answered.
To that point, Senator Osmick?
Thank you. And to that point, the buck stops here. That when we bring this as an energy fund, and I disagree, as Senator Dibble disagree with me calling it tax, I disagree with calling it a slush fund with the negative connotations that go with it. It will be a fund, an enterprise fund, that will be under legislative control, and we as legislators will be held responsible for where we spend the money. We could spend all the money on the Iron Range, which I'm sure Senator Tomassoni would terribly enjoy, or we could decide what we're going to do with it. But the short answer is that I believe on a philosophical basis that we as the legislature, because we are imposing this fee, should be responsible for the fee. And that's why the RDF going to an energy fund is something that I'm including in this bill.
Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, to that point, I didn't mean anything negative by calling it that. I think my point is that I'm trying to make that it is an undefined fund in terms of what it can and can't be spent on. I think just by the very nature of what we're calling it, it would be something relative to energy, presumably. But you're right, the buck does stop with the legislature, and the legislature has control of that. But I think we could all agree that we don't know what future legislatures may or may not do. So my point that I wanted to make is that under current law, this provision is monies collected from Xcel, put into a fund, and distributed on most of the monies are collected from Xcel, and the money is distributed back out in a proportional basis. And with the bill going forward, there's absolutely no guarantee where it may or may not be spent. That's my point.
Senator Osmick.
You're absolutely correct, and that's, again, as I stated during my part of the presentation, I commit to, through the Legislative Energy Commission, coming up with ideas that could be presented to the next legislature where we can spend it in a very wise and judicious manner. One option certainly could be that we can incentivize a program for local units of government, so that not only would we be getting the benefit of the solar energy into the grid to reduce the amount of dependency we have, but also that local units of government would actually begin saving money, which would exactly help the taxpayer as a result. So there's many different ideas that we can come up with, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. It's just that I don't think at this point in time we can really start designating it until we really have a chance to look at it, and that's what the LEC would be for.
Next, Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think to Mr. Grant, although maybe Senate Council can help, and I'm just trying to unfold this a little bit in terms of recollection and when things happened. And I'm believing the Renewable Development Fund preceded the Made in Minnesota program. And, okay, so that being the case, and Mr. Chair and members, what did we do with the Renewable Energy or Development Fund before Made in Minnesota? Was it not also then a renewable energy incentive program?
Mr. Chair
Commissioner
and
Grant.
Senator Senjum, when the fund was created in statute in 1994, and then 5 years later, before it was determined how the money would be spent and who would be responsible for making decisions about it, it was at that time that the Renewable Development Fund Board was created. It was a group that it consisted of Xcel customers, a representative from the Prairie Island Indian community, and the company itself. And the purpose was to vet projects through an RFP process that would in some way develop renewable resources in Minnesota, looking at new technologies. In some cases, this was pure science kinds of activities. In other cases, they were on-the-ground demonstration projects. And over the years, the board vetted probably over 1,000 projects or more and funded a great number of them with recommendations that went to the Public Utilities Commission, who eventually signed off on those projects.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. Grant and Mr. Chair, Mr. Grant. Then to follow up, as then Made in Minnesota program, as that came forward, then did that essentially use, I guess it didn't really, I guess I know the answer, it didn't use all that money, but it sort of consumed the program. Is that correct?
Mr. Grant.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Senjum, the Made in Minnesota program, as you've heard, is roughly $15 million a year out of the $26 million fund. So for 10 years of the fund, there would be a $15 million appropriation each year. So the balance left would be roughly $10 million, $11 million that could still be dedicated to other purposes.
And Mr. Chair and
Senator
Senator Osment, then, so the nature here is we're not necessarily getting rid of the fund. The money is still going to be there, and we can purpose that in some fashion. The Made in Minnesota program will go away, and we'll reinvent something. So it's simply then a matter of just kind of redesigning this whole program, and that would be certainly my hope. I'm not here today to get rid of renewable energy.
Senator Osmek.
Correct, Senator Senjum, is that we're not zeroing out the Renewable Development Fund. We're not getting rid of the fund. We would be ramping out the Made in Minnesota program and replace. My intent would be to replace it. Now, of course, what we come up with will be something that will have to be debated, and we have that other body across the street that has their own ideas. So I think there's some space for negotiation, as well as some opportunities that we can use the money for even better, a more widely expanded program. I think, again, going back to my comment on the glass being half full versus half empty, I think the glass is half full because the most expensive versions are what we are of solar energy is what we're currently spending Made in Minnesota money on. We should be looking at the most economical versions so that we can spread out the money. If we choose to, as a legislature, use that money to spread out more widely to more individuals. So I think there's larger benefits that we can gain by not having Made in Minnesota. And again, we have to go through, I think, the Legislative Energy Commission, where we can present ideas, come up with solutions, and bring it to the next legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions, members? All right, thank you, Commissioner Grant, for your testimony. Next on the agenda is Mr. O'Grady. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record. Also, David Schaefer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, Logan O'Grady, Director of Policy and Public Affairs at Clean Energy Economy, Minnesota. As a reminder, we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening Minnesota's private sector renewable energy business landscape. I want to thank Senator Osmek for his willingness to meet with our companies earlier this week. We had some very thoughtful and productive conversations with him and his staff which our businesses express both their immediate and long-term concerns with this bill. We appreciate that he took steps to address the very near-term consequences of this bill by amending it to extend through the 2017 award year, which closes on February 28th, less than 2 weeks from today. Nonetheless, I'm here to express industry concerns regarding the negative long-term effects of this bill that remain unaddressed. Repealing the MIM program, even after this year, without a replacement, will dramatically alter the stability of the solar industry in Minnesota and require businesses across the state to revise their business plans and adjust their workforces. The existing MIM program has succeeded in its intended goal. In short, Minnesota has a solar industry because of this program. 495 jobs exist today because of the Made in Minnesota program. 1,100 solar installations have been completed across the state since MIM's enactment. Businesses such as Aquila Solar, as mentioned by Commissioner Grant, which is located in Wabasha, may have to close its doors if this program goes away. Some of the businesses most affected by this legislation are here today. These businesses and their employees look forward to continued collaboration with Senator Osmek and members of this committee as we work to create jobs and grow Minnesota's clean energy economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Grady. Any questions? Senator Senjum.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. O'Grady, if, the way I see this landscape is that we go forward, we meet during the summer as part of the Legislative Energy Commission, we retool, redesign this program, and we come up with something better early in the 2018 session. And if that is the case, does this industry blink a little bit even?
Mr. O'Grady.
Mr. Chair and Senator Senjum, yes, we appreciate the invitation to work with Senator Osmek in that forum. It would still create a gap year, though, because the soonest that something could go into effect would be next year, which would put them at a 2019 funding cycle, which means that there would still be this immediate impact and impact on jobs and projects.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Osmek.
Just a comment on that point. Keep in mind that the number of projects that are funded by Made Minnesota are 1/3 of the number of applicants. And it's also done by a lottery system. So I agree that there may be some level of short-term gap, but keep in mind that none of the providers necessarily know that which grant, if they're going to get grants or if they're not going to be getting grants through this program. Each application is actually, Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Grant didn't really go into how Made Minnesota works, but it's entirely possible that any company that's currently involved in Made Minnesota may not even get a grant in this cycle because it is a completely random program of how the selection is made for who gets the money and who doesn't. So while I appreciate those comments, I just want to make sure that people understand that this is not, Made Minnesota doesn't guarantee that any company gets any Made Minnesota business. It is very random in how that goes out and until we expend the money.
Any further questions, members? All right, Mr. David Schaefer, welcome to the committee. State your name for the record and please proceed.
Good afternoon, Senators, and thank you, Chair. My name is David Schaefer. I'm with the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. I'm the General Counsel. We represent 103 different solar-related businesses, whether it's utilities, installers, developers, what have you. Today, though, we're representing our Made in Minnesota market participants, which are panel makers, component makers, installers, and distributors. The general message that I want to present today is one of business certainty. Our members established their businesses here with the promise that there'd be $15 million allocated annually, that this state was interested in solar broadly, and that you all would continue to support us. This bill, while improved, definitely, as of the amendments made today, will still cripple the installation of all of the solar around the state because our members have depended on this 15-year allotment. So we could only support a bill that would provide such certainty as we've had before. At a minimum, this bill would require that the Made in Minnesota program stays in place unless and until another incentive program is developed and implemented. We believe full funding of the $15 million is necessary through 2023, though it should be integrated into whatever the program ultimately looks like, even if this isn't a general energy fund. This program has brought companies, and then companies brought jobs, and then jobs fed families. Transitioning to a potential incentive devised by the LEC would, at the earliest, start in 2019, which would result in at least a one-year gap. And while there may be a bit of randomization, you can cover that randomization through applying enough projects. So ultimately, this program, while it does have a bit of a lottery element, is stable for most of our market participants. Lowering the annual incentive amount will also harm the families, the jobs, and the businesses that came to our state and relied on this program. Fortunately, there are ways to make this program better, to improve it in all sorts of ways, shapes, and sizes. There are ways to make the program dollars go further, to install more solar, to remove any problematic elements of the program itself, and to make this a great solar state. This will provide the continuity that our members require, that they need, and that this business community requests today. So with that, I request that you do not vote yes to this bill, that you vote no, and that we look towards figuring this out before anything is passed and that our industry is harmed. Thank you. If there's any further questions, I'll take them now.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Senator Goggin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of questions here. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around all this here. First off, I'm going to ask, I was looking through the bill and I'm wondering what the average size of a commercial installation has been for this, in this program, and then also what the average size of a residential installation is.
Mr.
Do you
Schaefer.
have those numbers by chance?
Mr. Schaefer.
Senator Goggin, I believe that the average size of a residential is 5 to 7, and I don't have the business ones off the top of my head, but those are somewhere between 20 and 40 usually.
Okay, and
Senator Goggin.
And I understand, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that per the current law or bill, that these have to be sized less than 120% of the annual energy consumption, of the customer's annual energy consumption.
Mr. Chair, Senator
Mr.
Goggin,
Schaefer.
that's correct.
Do you by chance know how many are sized at close to 120%, or are there ones that are down at around 105% of annual? And I'd like to know how we calculate the annual energy consumption, where the information for that comes from to get that value, so you know what size installation to put on the roof.
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, I think that might be a question that one of our installers could potentially answer if you'd like to have one of them come up. Otherwise, we could, I think the other party that might know that would be Xcel Energy.
Yeah, if you could get that information to me, that'd be great, to the committee. I'd like to know, I'd like to understand, you know, if you can get that information. And then the other question I have is, with the excess generation, what happens with the excess generation from these installations?
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, that is sold back to the grid at something called the average retail rate. And so that is slightly...
At the average what?
It's called the average retail rate.
Average retail rate.
And that is typically a blended rate of all the different retail rates, less a few. And so it's typically a little bit lower than what Xcel sells the energy at.
Senator Goggin.
So who covers that cost for the buying back that generation then?
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, that cost can be, I mean, Xcel is buying new energy, so then they can then sell it back to people. And so I guess it's kind of in some ways a benefit to Xcel in the sense that they don't have to go and buy more energy from a pre-existing coal plant or something like that. It's not lost energy. It's eventually sold and recaptured.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out if that goes into the Xcel ratepayers' bills every month as an additional cost to the ratepayers. I'm not sure. So I guess that might be something that we'd have to find out.
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, I don't believe that that's exactly covered by ratepayers in that type of sense. I think you could look at it as avoided energy that Xcel doesn't need to procure from a pre-existing source. And so you could, perhaps it's at a slightly higher rate, but if you look at the value of solar tariff that's codified in 216B164, at the bottom, it's a long system that the Department of Commerce has put together and that the PUC has approved to illustrate that solar really doesn't have any negative impacts on ratepayers or the utility itself.
Okay, well, thank you.
Senator
I
Goggin.
still have some more questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair. So does this program end in 2024? Is that what the target date is for that?
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, yeah.
2023? So in earlier
Senator
discussion, and I think it was Mr. O'Grady that was talking about what would happen if this ends now, you know, how it would be detrimental. What do you think is going to happen in 2023 when this sunsets and goes away? Are we going to, is the industry going to be hopefully on be able to stand on its own feet, or will we need to come back again and reinvest in the program to keep it going forward?
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, I believe that very quickly here, solar is going to be a least cost option. And whether it's rooftop, utility scale, it doesn't matter. It's going to be cheap and it's not going to need incentives, especially if you look at the fact that energy storage prices are continuing to fall as well. So I do not believe that we need to extend this program past 2023. And I think case in point is the planned sunset of the investment tax credit. We are well on our way to not needing any incentives, but we're not quite there yet, and that's why it's so important to keep this incentive here today.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Goggin.
I've answered all my questions. Thank you.
Did you wish to speak to one of Senator Goggin's questions?
About pricing.
What was the question?
You
If you could repeat the question again, that'd be great.
Senator Goggin, do you wish to share what you wanted?
Well, I was wondering for the installations that you do, how you calculate the annual energy consumption prior to doing the installation, so you get the idea of how the size of the installation should be.
Sure.
Would you please?
Yep.
Would you please introduce yourself and state your name for the record? Thank you.
Yeah. Chairman, members of the committee, and Michael Allen with All Energy Solar. Senator Goggin, to answer your question, it's actually a pretty easy process. Take 12 months of the last 12 months of their electric bills, add up how many kilowatt hours that they have used, and you size your system based off of that.
Okay, when you size the system, do you size it at 100%, or what number do you use to size it?
Typically, it's 100% or less. The option is we provide the consumer that option, but it's typically less than 100%.
Senator Goggin.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Allen.
can we also have Chris Files from?
Hi, I'm Chris.
Would you?
Chris Syhos with Ideal Energies. Thank you for having us here today. For the commercial installations, you're able to produce about 48,000 kilowatt hours, and that's very, very, very small. So when you're dealing with commercial installations, you're offsetting a very, very small portion of their energy consumption, and it's very, very rare that energy actually goes back to the grid. It's mostly used on site.
Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, I thought of a good way to describe this issue too. So average retail rate is lower than retail rate, almost, actually it inherently is. It's lower. And so it makes more economic sense to use the energy on site that you're producing, because then you're reducing how much energy you have to buy from Xcel or other utilities at retail rate. So it's the best way to maximize your profits through solar is to use the energy you produce on site and not even try to sell it back to the grid.
All right. Any further questions, members? I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for coming and giving your testimony today. And then I will excuse you from the table. And Senator Osmick, any more thoughts? Or you wish to take questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd appreciate a yes vote I think we have an opportunity in Minnesota to make a better program. I understand that there is hesitation, and I have listened to the concerns of the individuals and some that were here at the table. I think I also have questions regarding warranties on some of these state-sponsored panels that I think the installers are also saying, that includes the individuals that were here, they're having issues that I think we also can help with from a state perspective. If we're paying and help and providing assistance, I think that we, as the legislature, should also be able to say that that these panels have to have better warranties, but that's a comment or a discussion for another time. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would renew my motion for the Senate File 214 as amended and be referred to Finance.
Senator Osmic moves his bill, Senate File 214, to pass and be re-referred to Finance. Discussion to the bill, Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Some of your concerns about the Made in Minnesota program, I think a lot of us share. And I think that phasing it out and not letting it stand for 7 more years may be appropriate, and I'm not sure 1 year is enough time to phase out something where people are involved in the supply line, everything else. I think that a lot of these businesses, we have a couple of letters in our packets talking about concern about their individual businesses. But I guess we haven't spent much time talking about the rest of the bill, and I don't need to talk about it much right now, but I really think that listening to the discussion between, I think, Senator Dibble and you on the tax issue, whether this is a tax or whatever, right now it was something the legislature mandated as part of the agreement in 1994. It was a compromise. Nobody was thrilled with it, but it was the state said if you're going to store nuclear waste on site, relatively, well, very long term it looks like, that you have to put funds into this to look into renewable development. And that money has been spent that way, largely speaking. I think there are times when the legislature has intervened and so on. But it is a program right now, as you know, we all know that it's Xcel ratepayer funded. Xcel administers the program. The board they have representatives on, and other folks, including ratepayers, involved on the board making the decisions, and they have to get them approved by the PUC. And taking that, which I would argue is a mandated service, mandated program that we're telling Xcel that it has to do, and it's costing their customers money. But using the word that you, I think, backed off of using the word taxes, I think if you take it and say we're going to put it into the state treasury, into a special fund, then it does strike me as $26 million in taxes, because then it's taking it away from the place it's coming from and saying we're going to put this into a state fund. And I may have used the word slush fund too, but realistically in the bill, all the bill talks about is creating an energy fund. It doesn't say who gets to use the money, who gets to spend it, how it's spent. Some members of the legislature are full of energy. Does that mean they should get energy funds? I mean, I know that's not what you're intending. I'm not saying that's what it is, but to me, this account, which is not a state account, but it's an account in Xcel, that they have, I don't know what they have, 2 of the 7 board members who decide this on it. The ratepayers have a couple. It seems to me that keeping it in that process is a lot better way than having the legislature intervene. And the Made in Minnesota program, which all the testimony and all your concerns have focused on how well that was not done, that was legislative stepping in and saying we're going to do this. Again, as I'll point out, just a couple years after Senator Rosen tried to make sure there was a good, fair, accountable process. So I'm not persuaded in any way that taking the money from this Renewable Development Fund, whatever we call it, and making it into a state fund that the legislature, I think you and I and all of us here and all of us on the Energy Commission have strong thoughts and many good ideas perhaps, but I'm not sure that we need another fund like that. And I really do think if you're going to use the word tax, that's what would be doing when you're taking it out of Excel's pocket and saying, we, the legislature, are going to spend it. I think that's what I would define that as a tax, not the way it is now. I don't doubt that Excel would rather not have any of this. I don't know. I haven't heard them speak up pro or con on this bill. But it does seem right now that there is a program in place, and that most of the concerns I've heard about it has been when the legislature stepped in and interfered with the process they were going through. So I can't support the bill. I think it's I'm open to working with you or others, and would encourage you to keep working on Made in Minnesota. And I really think the solar rewards program that Excel is running outside of there may have much better incentives and a much more efficient way of delivering solar incentives than the Made in Minnesota program does. But I'd be eager to work with you on phasing out the Made in Minnesota program, but phasing out the renewable development, not phasing it out, but taking it over as a state fund. I just think that's a bad idea. And I urge people to vote against it, and I will urge you to continue working on the Made in Minnesota thing, but with more than 1 year in place. I guess that's my point. I do not support it the way it is. I think we should ask for I will ask for roll call on this, but I really think that you're raising some legitimate points about the Made in Minnesota thing, but the arguments you're using about the rest of the RDF, I just don't see that your solution is not making it worse.
Senator Osmick?
Thank you, and to Senator Marty's point, I appreciate the comments, but I go back to the buck stops here. We have legislatively created this fund, and that I believe in accountability, and I think ultimately by having it as part of an energy fund where we can be held accountable is a better way to go. And it's just, I think it's a philosophical difference. I understand your point, but this is the direction I think we are better as a legislature by being accountable. So with that, I'll close my comments.
A roll call has been requested and a roll call is granted. Is it to that point, Senator Goggin?
No, not to that point. I wanted to discuss further about where this whole thing was going, because
okay.
I thought there's a possibility that we were going to review this and take a long-term look at it, take a good time to look at it to make sure we're getting the funds, as much of the funds deployed out to the solar installations as we possibly can. That's what I was thinking on this, and you know, we need to look at that. I think that was how I was understanding it, is we are looking at ways to get as much of that fund deployed so those installations can happen and you folks can get more installations done. But we're just looking at an accountability of it. Is that a correct statement, Senator Osmick?
Senator Osmick.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, well, there's two phases to this. There's the RDF accountability that Senator Marty and I disagree upon. The other component is the Made in Minnesota program, that we should have a better, more economical, more broadly available program, and that's where the Legislative Energy Commission is going to come in to create a better program, because what we have with Made in Minnesota right now, in my opinion, is incredibly expensive by a kilowatt hour, and it could be made better by having it not focused on Made in Minnesota, but making it more broadly. And one additional point, you'll note that the installers and other or the other individuals that are involved in that market, this is only a fraction of their market. This is not an entire market collapsing as a result. There's a lot of less expensive options that don't qualify for Made in Minnesota, but do qualify for the 30% incentive through the federal government, that do qualify for the 34% federal depreciation tax savings, that do qualify for the 9% state depreciation tax savings. So while this is a two-pronged approach, my point on the Made in Minnesota is that we can do better.
Follow-up, Senator Goggin.
Yeah, I agree, Senator Osmick, that we can do better on this, and that's my intent, is that we do better with that deployment of the funds. Thank you.
I do have a list of those to speak. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief because Senator Marty, again, has made most of the points that I was going to make. I would just say that I also appreciate some of the issues raised by the discussion and the presentation of this bill. I think a number of us have had some concerns, and even some of the witnesses in opposition to this bill who represent the industry feel like, and I think the agency even feels like, improvements can be made to the Made in Minnesota program. I've never myself actually been in love with simply taking these dollars and appropriating them to the purposes that we see fit, but having some fidelity to the original creation of the Renewable Development Fund that stemmed out of the Prairie Island license extension many years ago. And of course, we had a legislative auditor's report that was fairly critical of just how loose that process was. And I think Senator Rosen did some good work a few years ago to try to tighten that process up a little bit, to create some more guidance and accountabilities for that. And then we helped ourselves before that time and after that time to just simply taking dollars and appropriating them to specific purposes. So I feel like we're getting even further away from the finding of the legislative auditor's report and the good work of Senator Rosen. The reason I'm concerned with Senate File 214 is because we're moving away, like I said, but also it just doesn't seem clear what we'll be doing with the energy fund account, and it's not clear that those dollars would be spent in the rate payers area of Excel or the Excel territory. So, I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate some of the effort that Senator Osmek is going to, but I'm not ready to vote for Senate File 214 at this time. I think Senator Goggin raises some good issues as well. I wish we could hold on to the bill and maybe not wait for next summer to see what materializes. We have, a pretty compelling letter here from MNSEA and Clean Energy Economy, Minnesota, signed by 20 firms that say this puts upwards of 500 jobs into question. There's a big effort to address the issues up in Becker and the jobs up there, as well as the property tax issues for that community. I don't know why we're not listening to the industry when they say that taking this step now is a real problem for them. I know you solve the short-term problems, but as we heard in testimony, this creates instability and lack of predictability in this industry that is part of the underlying premise of the business models that they put together and are counting on for their projected business for the coming years. So it's a good start of a discussion, but I don't think we're ready to move this bill on.
Senator Simonson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too will be brief. I think a lot of things have been said that don't need to be said twice. But I just want to, remind members that our actions have consequences here. And I think this is a really good discussion, Senator Osmek. I think that I don't know that you'd find anybody that's not involved in the energy business or interested in energy policy in the legislature that doesn't want to be a part of this discussion, right? I mean, we here at the legislature oftentimes put programs into place and we come back, year after year after year after year and we adjust because things happen, things change. Technology is constantly advancing. And I think I'd be the first to admit that there are some things that we could do to this program that will make it better. So I appreciate the discussion from that perspective. But I think we really have to keep sight of the fact that what we're doing here is we're eliminating something that we put into place just a few short years ago. And I think back to 2013, and I sat on that conference committee with Senator Marty at the time, and I think back to those discussions and the hours and hours and hours that we spent trying to come up with something that might work going forward. And I think there was a lot of hesitation and a lot of reluctance on the parts of many folks. But what we saw since 2013 to now is an industry that has exploded. I think I would encourage all of us to listen to folks that are in the business, doing the work, taking the applications, listening to homeowners. It's out there. The demand is there. And I think we tried to shore up an emerging industry, and I think we've done a good job of that. And I think it's incredibly unfortunate if we pull the rug out from under them now. And I'm not saying that we can't make some sort of adjustments going forward, because quite frankly, we probably should. So what we're doing, folks, if we vote yes on this and this gets signed into law, we are doing that to this industry. We are saying, you know what, we like what you're doing and we want you to keep doing it. We're taking away one of the tools that you have to advance yourselves. And we're trying to make it better by saying, we promise to take a look at this next summer. You know, the Energy Commission is going to come together and come up with some ideas. And I just can't wrap my head around this. Why didn't we do that first? Right? Why can't the Energy Commission come together, have this discussion, and the other greater discussions that have to come involved with it, and come forward with a recommendation to the legislature before we unwind what I think is really good policy? I just don't understand that. I can't get past that. And I think if this gets signed into law, we'll come back this summer and we'll have these discussions. But frankly, folks, the Energy Commission doesn't have the authority to enact anything into law. So if the commission comes up with the best idea in the world that may be even better than the Made in Minnesota program, they can't put it into law. And we'll come back into session next winter, and it'll be a bonding year. And there won't be a big appetite for big policy discussions, perhaps. We don't know that. We control this, right? So my fear is that we create this big lag, and we take the wind, no pun intended, we take the wind out of the solar industry by creating this gap. And I think that's unfortunate. I think it's the cart before the horse. I wish we would stop this bill and just say, you know what, we all are in agreement on both sides of the aisle that we want to have good discussions without sending a negative ripple effect into the community. So I too would encourage a no vote, and we'll see what happens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Senjum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Senator Osmick, I'm going to support this bill today, and I do it at your word and at my personal belief that we can make this better and we will make it better. If I thought for a millisecond that we weren't going to end up with a better program come next February or March and enact that, I probably wouldn't vote for it. But I do trust that we can, and I do trust that we will. And I think we have to. I mean, yes, we all need a mix of energy, a balanced energy system, but you know, we have to recognize renewables are here. They should be here. They are here. The public demands that they're here, and I think we all probably to some extent hear that. And so I'm confident in my own mind that we can do this, and that we do come back in January and with a bill in mind, and maybe even one on paper, and have it ready, and to some great extent then that the industry and our program with respect to embracing renewable energy doesn't suffer a blink in its heartbeat, so to speak. So thank you very much.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Osmick, I think I'm going to ask some pretty basic questions, and my first one kind of plays off of something that Senator Goggin was asking, and if you've looked at how this change will affect Minnesota jobs and Minnesota companies. We've heard testimony that we expect a pullback. What would be your response? What would be your answer to that? How this expansion will keep Minnesota jobs and Minnesota companies here in Minnesota?
Senator Osmick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Pratt, I think I go back to the comments that I made earlier regarding there are a lot of options that are currently being pursued by solar developers and installers in Minnesota that are not made in Minnesota. that receive significant credits, whether it's the 30% from the federal government or the depreciations that are involved, that tie into the breaks and benefits that are available through current methodology. Again, this is focused on, the Made in Minnesota provisions are focused on the most expensive of all of the options and subsidizing that expensive option. My intent, and as Senator Senjum indicated, my intent is to have something ready for January of next year, if that is what the legislature wants to do, to create a different methodology by which we could distribute this money more widely to incentivize a more broad and expansive program, if that's what the legislature wants to do. I just did quick math on 15 million divided by the 500 jobs that was, or 470 or whatever the number was. That's $30,000 a year. That's a lot of money per individual in that industry. So, and I do this, I bring this forward with the intent of doing that. We have to get the House to go along, but I think that when we look at it and look at it very, very closely, we can do better.
Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Osmek. I'll reiterate what Senator Senjum said. I'll vote to pass out the bill because I do think we can do something better than we have today, and I trust Senator Osmek, and I know Senator Osmek is interested in making sure that we grow our Minnesota economy, and we help preserve and attract new, good-paying Minnesota jobs. So I intend to support the bill.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Senator Simonson made one of the big points, and Senator Senjum, I think you should hear what he said. He talked about the fact, first of all, the Legislative Energy Commission cannot enact legislation. It doesn't always agree. Its members obviously don't all agree. And it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. We're saying we're going to get rid of the way we're doing things now, and we're going to study what we might do in the future. And the concerns that earlier Senator Goggin was saying, the goal should be to make sure we get as much money out there to be helping move solar forward in a cost-effective way and create the jobs and everything else. But Made in Minnesota, which Senator Osmek, you're talking about how much that program was, that was one of the cases where the legislature stepped in and took the money out of the Renewable Development Fund, said we're going to spend it this way. And as I said earlier, I'm happy to work with Senator Osmek or anyone to try and say, because I'm not defending Made in Minnesota staying around for 7 more years. I think 1 year is too fast for doing it. But the solution, the bigger part of the bill, is taking all of that money and saying now the legislature is going to spend all of it, Senator Senjum. We're going to take 100% of it. We're going to spend it the way we see fit, which right now is for an energy fund, which will be defined. Presumably, LEC members will have say in it. But I would make the case that the Solar Rewards Program, which is part of the RDF right now, a part that nobody's talked about other than Mr. Grant mentioned it, I think that's $5 million a year. That I think if you ask Xcel, I think they would say that the cost per kilowatt of installation is far less than Made in Minnesota because the incentive structure is done differently. I think that's a good case of making the argument why the legislature shouldn't be the ones running the program and allocating the funds. We have so many other funds. I keep hearing people all the time going after everything from IRRB and all these other funds and how when legislators are involved with it, it doesn't always make better allocation of the funds. And so I think it really is when Senator Simonson's point was, you got it backwards. You're going to throw out what we've got and say, well, we might be able to do a better job as legislators, and we'll have meetings this summer and maybe find a way to do that. To me, when the illustration of what's wrong with the program is one portion of it that the legislature had stepped in earlier on, it seems to me that maybe saying the legislature should take 100% of it is not a good idea.
Senator Osmic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment. When the energy fund is only going to be spent when the legislature decides to spend the money. That money is not evaporating. It's not going into thin air. We're still going to be imposing the fee, tax, or whatever you wish to call it, and that money is still going to be in the fund. So we're not sending that money anyplace until we legislatively do it, and that's what I come back to again, that I prefer, in my opinion, to have us be where the buck stops.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Osmic, and I do have to comment on this, and I have been very silent on this, but I believe the reform that was developed and passed in a bipartisan manner in 11 and 12 was to address the very fact of the legislature in the past did take quite a bit of liberties to that funding, and it got to be very almost abusive in a manner. So the bill that was passed again in a bipartisan manner was had off ramps, it had boundaries, it had some checkpoints. So I do plan on voting for this bill, but I am concerned that we are letting the legislature have control of this money again, because I have personally, and so has Senator Dibble and Senator Marty and Senator Senjum have witnessed the overreach in this fund over and over and over again. So I just want to be very cautionary about that term.
Seeing no.
I'd just like to comment
To
back
that
on
point,
that.
Senator
I
Osmic.
absolutely agree with you that this is not a raid fund that can be taken to fill in potholes. This should not be a fund that's taken to develop programs for HHS. This is an energy fund that should be developed towards renewable energy options and energy solutions for Minnesota. And I commit to you as chair of this committee, I will not hear bills that go and raid, and I will fight to the dickens any attempt that would be made upon it.
Senator Senjum.
You know, this is really a good discussion. You know, trust is a wonderful thing. Sometimes it's not there, but my hope is, at least with respect to this bill, it will be there. And I'm trusting certainly our chairman here, and frankly, I'm trusting the other side. And I don't think, you know, we'll spin the top on how we deal with this fund, and maybe in fact we'll end up right where we are. And that's okay too, if we take a good discussion, come back right where we are, if we can make it work better. And but you know, the score is 34-33 in this legislature. I don't think you have to worry too much about this money going off to other purposes. It's going to stay in renewable energy, and I'm absolutely sure of that.
Seeing no further discussion, any closing comments, Senator Osmic?
No, thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate that there will be some no votes, and I hope that in the Legislative Energy Commission we can make a better program for Minnesota.
Senator Osmic renews his motion that Senate File 214, as amended, pass and be re-referred to the Committee on Finance. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Osmic?
Yes.
Vice Chair Matthews?
Yes.
Senator Marty?
No.
Senator Dibble?
No.
Senator Goggin?
No.
Senator Pratt?
Yes.
Senator Rosen?
Yes.
Senator Senjum?
Yes.
Senator Simonson?
No.
There being 5 ayes and 4 nays, the bill passes and is re-referred to Finance. There is no further items on the agenda. This committee is adjourned.